So starting with number 1, how would I factor this?
-10.
Perfect. We want to find 2 factors of -70 that add to -3, so that would be -10 and 7. So I could write it as x minus 10 times x plus 7. And it doesn't matter the order, and remember, the final is multiple choice, so it'll either be written like this, or it'll be written x plus 7 times x minus 10.
Wait, there's no writing.
All right, let's take a look at number 2. 2's a little bit different. What should I do first here? I could take out a 3 because I have a common factor, because it's easiest to factor this when my leading coefficient is 1. So I'm just going to divide everything here by 3. What's 9 divided by 3? 3. So I have 3k in the middle. And 6 divided by 3?
2.
So now I need to see what are 2 factors of 2 that add to 3? 2 and 1. So I would write it as k here. So k plus 2 times k plus 1. And then since I took out that 3, it just needs to go out front. All right, let's go to the next section. So number 5. Here we want to solve each equation by factoring. So what should I do first here? Minus 2a. We want to move everything to the other side and put it in standard form. So I have a squared minus 2a minus 3 is equal to 0. Now I factor like normal. So what are 2 factors of -3 that add to -2? -3 and 1. So I would write that as a minus 3 times a plus 1 equals 0. Here I'm solving. So I actually have to find a equals. So I can't just factor. I got to do one more step. So I would set a minus 3 equal to 0 and a plus 1 equal to 0. So what would a be equal to? 3 and -1. Perfect. Once you get to here, you just flip the signs of what's in the equation. Or we would just add 3 to both sides and subtract 1. So those are our 2 answers. All right, let's look at number 7. We want to solve by taking square roots. So what should I do first to solve number 7? Perfect. We want to get our variable all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. So now I have 9p squared is equal to 36. Then what can I do to get that variable all by itself?
Divide by 9.
Divide by 9. So p squared is equal to, what's 36 divided by 9? 4. Then what should I do?
Take the square root.
Take the square root. So p is equal to, what do I have to remember to do when I take the square root of both sides?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. So it's plus or minus 2. But remember, it's multiple choice. So just look at your answer choices. Odds are they're all going to be plus or minus, so you just have to know the number. All right, let's take a look at number 9. So here we have to solve by completing the square. So completing the square is where we need a little formula that we have to remember. So to complete the square, we have b over 2 squared. Anytime it says solve by completing the square, this is the formula that we use. So to complete the square, we start by moving the number to the other side. So we leave the x's on one side. So it'll be x squared plus 8x is equal to 7, because I add 7 to both sides. In the blank here, that's where I put that b over 2 squared. So my b is the middle number. So this would be 8 over 2 squared. What is 8 over 2? 4. So this is 4 squared. So then when I write my answer, I have these big parentheses squared. I take the number that's squared here, and then, or the variable, whatever's squared there, and whatever's squared here, and put that into my parentheses. So it'll be x plus 4 on the inside. Now what is 4 squared?
62.
16. So I'm adding 16 just randomly out of nowhere on the left side of my equation. So I also have to make sure I add 16 on the right side too. So what's 7 plus 16? 23. What do you think I should do next? So I'm trying to solve for x, but x is stuck inside that squared. So what's the opposite of squared? How do I get rid of the squared? Square root. Awesome. We take the square root of both sides. So it cancels out there. So I have x plus 4. What do I have to remember to do when I take the square root of both sides? I need that plus or minus square root 23. And then what's the last step? Minus 4. Now I can't combine a whole number with a square root, so I just leave it. So it'll be x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus square root 23. And that's our answer. Any questions here? So remember, if you're completing the square, this is the formula that you have to use. So make sure you have that written down. All right, next we have complex numbers. So those are the imaginary numbers I. So when subtracting, we just have to make sure we're combining like terms. But what do I have to do first? Awesome, I got to distribute that negative. So I have negative 2 minus 2i minus 3 minus 3i. Now what are my real numbers here? You can't FOIL this one because we're subtracting, but when we do the next one, we're multiplying, so then we'll FOIL. Here, when you're adding or subtracting, you just distribute the negative if you have one, and then get rid of the parentheses. What are my real numbers? Negative 2 and negative 3, so the numbers that don't have i's. So what's negative 2 minus 3? Negative 5. And then what are my imaginary numbers? Negative 2i and negative 3i, so it's negative 2i minus 3i. Negative 5i. We always write it with the real number first, the imaginary number second, but remember, it's multiple choice. So just look for the answer choice that matches yours. So let's look at 13. 13's a little bit different. No. 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 So when I'm multiplying these, how would I multiply them? It would be 1 times 6, but what's that word called? How do I multiply? Not distribute. FOIL. So I multiply the first one, so that would be 1 times 6 is 6. Then the outsides would be 1 times negative 4i, which is negative 4i. Then the insides, what's negative 7i times 6? Negative 42i. And then the last, so it's negative 7i times negative 4i. It would be positive, because a negative times negative is positive, so positive 28i squared, because we have 2 i's. Now another thing that we have to remember is to make a little note. I squared is equal to what?
0.
Anybody remember? Negative 1. So here I just change the I squared and make this negative. So we change the sign of whatever it's touching. So add this to whatever formulas you gotta remember for the final. So now what are my real numbers? So what's 6 minus 28? Negative 22, perfect. What are my imaginary numbers?
Negative 4i, negative 42i.
Negative 4i minus 42i is what?
Negative 46i.
Negative 46i. Awesome. And that's our answer. So for these, we have to name the polynomial by degree and by the number of terms. So let's see. If we have the degree of 1, or we start with actually the degree of 0, which would mean it's constant. The degree of 1, so if I had just an x, that would be linear. If I had x squared, so the degree of 2, what would that be? Quadratic. So if I have the third degree of 3, what do we call that? Cubic, perfect. What about the fourth degree?
Binomial.
Fourth degree.
Oh, yeah. Is it
Quartic. Just think like 4 quarters, quartic. And then we can also classify it by the number of terms. So if I have, all right, so if I have one term, what do we call it? Monomial. If I have 2 terms, binomial. And 3 terms, trinomial. And 4, polynomial of 4 terms. So let's look at 15. So what is my highest degree here? The 4th. So I have x to the 4th power. So what would we call that? Quartic. And then how many terms do I have? I have 2, so it would be quartic binomial. Here we have to describe the end behavior. So as a little refresher, if the degree is even, that means that they go in the same direction. Odd means that they go in opposite directions. And if it's positive, that means the right one goes up. Yes, yes. So for number 17, we have negative x to the 4th power. So it's even, so they're going to go in the same direction. So what do you think? Is it up and up or down and down?
up and down.
Same direction, so it's either going to be up, up, or down, down. If it's negative, what do you think? Are they going to go up or down? Down, so they're going to go down and down. So this one being multiple choice, it would say falls left and falls right. So it just talks about the left and right arrow in words. If it is going up, it would say rises. So it would use the word rises for up. All right, 19. Here we want to find the zeros. So to find the zeros, we change f of x to be 0. So that means I just set both of my parentheses equal to 0. So 3x plus 2 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. How would I solve for x? Minus 2. So 3x is equal to negative 2, and then? Divide by 3. So x is equal to? Negative 2 over 3. So that's one answer. And then for the other one, what should I do? Subtract 3. So x is equal to? Negative 3. So there's our other answer. So to find the zeros, we just set each parenthesis equal to 0. It's already factored for us. We just got to set them equal to 0 and solve. All right, let's take a look at 21. So here we want to factor by grouping. So when we group the first two and group the second two. And we want to see what do we have in common that we can take out. So in my first group, what's the greatest common factor here? 5, and what else? Do they have any r's in common? R squared. So when I divide both of these by 5r squared, what am I left with?
5R.
What's 15 divided by 5?
3R.
So 3r. And what's 5r squared divided by 5r squared? 1. And then we do the same thing for the second. What does 18r and 6 have in common? A little bit bigger. 6. So I can divide both of these by 6. So what's 18 divided by 6? 3r. And then 6 divided by 6 is 1. So when we factor by grouping, we take the two outsiders and put them together. So 5r squared plus 6. And then the two insiders become 1. So 3r plus 1. And that's our answer. All right, 23. So here we're dividing. So you can divide however you want. So let's divide using synthetic division because that's going to be a lot easier for us. So what's going to go on the outside of the box? -8. We change the sign of this number. And then what goes inside? Perfect. 7, 57, 16, and 63. So we drop down the 7 first. Outside, we multiply. So what's -8 times 7? -8 times 7. -56. So then we add. So that would be +1. -8 times 1 would be -8. 16 minus 8 is 8. -8 times 8 is -64. So then we add inside and we get -1. So if my question started with r to the third power, what does my answer have to start with? R squared. So it'll be 7r squared plus r plus 8, remainder -1. But remember, we can also write our remainder as a fraction, so it would be -1 over r plus 8. So that is the same thing as saying remainder -1. So whatever the number is on top, that's your remainder. It's multiple choice, so you could either see the answer with the remainder like r or as a fraction. So here we want to simplify our radical. What are two factors of 16? Yes. 4 and 4. I could keep going, but I'm circling groups of what here?
You're still teaching.
Circling groups of 2. So what comes to the outside? I put a 4 on the outside. I also have a 2 on the outside. And then I do the same thing with the A's. How many A's do I have? 2. So I circle groups of what? Groups of 2. So what comes to the outside? An A. So I have 2 times 4 times A, which would be what? 8A. Do I have anything left on the inside? Nope. So I don't have a radical in my answer. All right, let's take a look at 27. So here we have an exponent, that's a fraction. What do we know that the denominator of our fraction turns into? The square root. So that's the index. So that's the number that goes out front of our square root. So I have the square root of 16a squared, and then that is to the third power. So what are two factors of 16? 4 and 4. I'm circling groups of what? Groups of 2, so I could stop there. And then I also have 2 a's, so I could circle those too. So what comes to the outside? 4 times a. But it's 4a to the third power. We can't forget about that third power up top. So this is like saying 4 times 4 times 4 and a times a times a. So what's 4 times 4 times 4? $64. And what's a times a times a? A to the third power. So that's our answer. So for 29, we just have to solve the equation. What should I do first?
Times 2.
I want to move that 4 to the other side.
Minus 4.
So I subtract 4. So 11 minus 4 would be 7. So 7 is equal to the square root of x divided by 9. How do I get rid of that square root? What's the opposite of taking the square root? We want to square both sides because that'll cancel out with the square root. What is 7 to the second power?
49.
49. So 49 is equal to x divided by 9. And then what's my last step? Multiply both sides by 9. So x is equal to 49 times 9, which you guys will have your calculators for the final. But I'm just going to do it on the side here. 9 times 9 is 81. 4 times 9 is 36, plus 8 would be 44, so 441. So don't be afraid if you get big numbers for the final. You guys will have your calculator, so you could just put it in the calculator. It'll also be multiple choice, so keep that in mind too. Any questions here? All right. Sketch the graph of each function. For 31, do we know that it'll be exponential growth or decay?
Growth.
It'll be growth because 2 is greater than 1. So it's going to be a graph that is increasing. What about for 32? Is it going to be exponential growth or decay? Decay, because 1/2 is less than 1. So it's going to be decreasing. It'll look like this. So just knowing if it's exponential growth or decay will eliminate most of our answer choices right there. But for 31, let's say we had 2 graphs that showed exponential growth. So how can I tell the difference? Well, we can plug in any number we want for x. So let's plug in 0. So if I have 4 times 2 to the power of 0, what's 2 to the power of 0?
1.
1, awesome. And 4 times 1? 4. So when I plugged in 0, I got 4. So I'm going to stay at 0, put a point on 4. So I just need to pick the graph that goes through the y-axis at this point. And it'll have exponential growth, so it'll look like that. So you don't really need to plug in 4 points here. Just plug in 1 and see what graph matches. All right, 33. Your starting salary at a new company is $30,000 and it increases by 4% each year. What will your salary be in 6 years? So here, our equation is P times 1 plus the rate to the power of. So we plug in what we have. P is the principal, so that's the starting amount. So 30,000 times 1 plus the rate. What's our rate here? 4%, but remember it has to be the decimal. So what's the decimal version? Awesome, 0.04. And then to the power of 6. And then we would just put this in our calculator. So make sure you follow the order of operations first. You have to do the parentheses, so 1 plus 0.04 to the power of 6, and then times 30,000. So we should get 37,959.57. $34 is a little bit different here. Our salary decreases by 4% each year. So it would be 30,000 is our principal again. What happens when we decrease? You subtract in the middle, so it'd be 1 minus 0.04 to the power of 6. So again, put it in the calculator. So we get 23,482.73. And then 35, Sally invests $12,000 at 5% interest compounded continuously. How much money will he have? Oh, it says he, but it's Sally. In 6 years. My bad. So compounded continuously, we use our PERT formula, P times E to the power of R times T. So 12,000 times E to the power of our rate would be the decimal version of 5%, so 0.05, times 6. So first I have to do the multiplication in the exponent, so 0.05 times 6. Then I do E to the power of that. And then multiply that times 12,000. So we should get 16,198.3. So for 36, we have to write each equation in exponential form. So what's my base? 13. What's the exponent?
X plus 1.
Awesome. So we just switch these two. For 38, we're putting it in log form. So I start with the word log. What's my base?
14.
And then we switch these two. So 1 and then 0. For 40, we have to evaluate the expression. So here, this is equal to some number x. So it would be 2 to the power of x is equal to 1 over 32. What type of exponent makes this a fraction? A negative. So we know our answer is going to be negative. And 2 to what power would give us 32? 2 to the 5th power is 32. So our x is equal to negative 5. For 42, we have log base 4 of a times b times c to the 3rd power. What goes with addition when we are expanding logs? Oh, multiplication. Addition. I said addition. I said the answer. Yes. So log base 4, and we're adding these now. So a, every time we break it up, we have to add a new log. So log base 4b plus log base 4c to the 3rd power. What do I do with this 3? I move it in front of the log. So it'll be log base 4a plus log base 4b plus 3 log base 4c. For 44, we're doing the opposite. We're condensing. So any number that I have out front, we want to bring it to be an exponent. And then what goes with addition? Multiplication. So I have log base 4, and then we just multiply everything that we're taking the log of. So it'll be 5 times 12 times 7 to the 3rd power. And we can just leave it like this. Remember, your answers are multiple choice, and it'll probably be like x, y, and z, so you can't actually multiply it, but we would just leave it like this. All right, and that's where we'll stop today. We'll start with page 6 tomorrow. Tuesday.